Welcome everyone. This is Every Denison Academy, making sustainability a reality. My name is Natalia Malhanova, Director Strategic Marketing, and today, together with Niels Skov, Director Sustainability and Marketing Excellence, we will host the event of this week. We have prepared 4 topics for you, every day a different subject, diving more into various aspects of sustainability. Today we will discuss trends, legislation, but also the future of our packaging. Tomorrow we will do more around label and what is its role in sustainability. On Wednesday we will dive into real examples of sustainable product portfolios, and we will close the week with a panel discussion hosted by true sustainability experts. But today let's start with trends, legislation, and why sustainability matters. And before we start, a few house rules to share. All the sessions will be recorded and shared with you after we complete the event. At the bottom of your screen you can find a Q&A box. Please make sure to ask your questions there, and we will try to respond during these days. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker of today. Niels, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Great introduction. Thank you for having me. As already said, I'm Niels Christian Schue. I am the Director of Sustainability and Marketing Excellence at Every Denison. Today I'm just going to do a quick introduction to you all, where we're going to talk about the Every Denison sustainability goals. What you see on screen is that we have set quite challenging goals for ourselves for 2030, which are broken down into 3 main topics. We want to deliver innovations that advance the circular economy. We want to reduce our environmental impact in the industries that we work in, and we want to do a positive impact on the people working for us and around us. Taking that to the next step, you see here that the sustainable products portfolio is very key to our hearts. We're going to do a lot more talking over the next 4 days about the product portfolios. We're also very keen as a company to ensure that we follow corporate social responsibility. We are a key industry player and we need to do right to our people and the environment we work in. That also goes for diversity and inclusion, which is also very close to our hearts. More specifically, you're going to see a quite busy slide. The slide is going to show to you what topics we are working with in terms of the sustainability goals. The first one you see is that we are aiming by 2030 to have minimum, all of them, 100% of our products containing recycled or sustainable materials in our portfolios. We're going to ensure that 100% of our portfolios is enhancing and supporting circularity in the filmic material. Meaning that you as a consumer, you as a customer can go and ensure that products we put to market can be recirculated into new materials, so we avoid using virgin materials. We also significantly strong in the intelligent label space, and in that space we're going to talk about what we can do in terms of intelligent label, which also enhances the circular economy. You will hear more about as we progress through the week. A key topic for us is also the matrix and liner recycling. Matrix and liner recycling, we will talk more end of the day. In that space, we are doing quite significant leaps forward, both on our own, but also together with industry partners, because we as an industry are putting matrix and liner waste into the industry and needs to do something to get it back again. When looking to the emission goals we have set ourselves, what you see on screen is we have scope 1 and 2, where we intend to reduce our own emissions by at least 70% by 2030. That's quite challenging topics, and we're going to do significant efforts to reach these targets together with our partners in the industry. What you also see to the right of that is the 30% goal that we have for our scope 3. Scope 3 can be a tad challenging because we have to go outside our own 4 walls, so to speak, and enhance the collaboration with partners in the industry, but we are aiming to do that as well. 100% of our products are also to be of material that is in the paper space that comes from renewable sources from the paper industry, which is also significantly challenging for us all. Again, I'm not going to talk you through each of all of these topics. I just want to point to the next slide, which is goal number 3, where we talk about inclusion and the people working for us. We have targets, significantly strong set targets around inclusion, diversity, inclusion, and equality, which is something also goes hand in hand with the UN sustainability goals that we're also chartering. So in terms of presentation about the Avery Dennison goals, we then are presenting them to you today as a global target. What we have to do now and what we're embarking on a journey to do is break these goals into measurables for the region. So we are working in Europe, so we're going to break these into tangible targets for the region, meaning that we will be able to document our progress as we progress towards 2030, because these are of quite significant importance for all of us. So this is what I have prepared in terms of presenting you for our sustainability goals, and I am going to pass on to the audience to see if this has brought any questions so far.
Thank you very much, Niels. Thank you. So indeed, I've got a few questions from the audience. The first one is, how are you going to measure the achievements?
To measure the achievements, it's quite significant. It's important that you do this based on science data. So what we have done is we have committed ourselves to the SBTI. SBTI is the Science-Based Target Initiatives. And that is an outside organization that goes and documents what we are saying in terms of progress is correct and can be justified. So we don't make claims that cannot be supported. We're also going to make an investment into a LCA tool, which is going to be based on carbon trust, and that carbon trust tool will also give us ability to support our customers, our partners, a true LCA life cycle analysis journey documentation, and that is going to be live, we expect, by Q1 next year. So it's important that we do this based on data.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I also have a nice hello from people in the industry. Thank you. Hello back. And a question, what has been the progress in the last 5 years? We have always shown a commitment to sustainability as Avery Dennison. And especially our headquarters, it says, been very sustainable building. Anything else you would like to share?
What we have done is that we have used our significant influence in the industry also to drive materials that enhance the circular economy. We have launched recycling programs that you will hear more about over the next days. We have launched materials that support the circular economy, for instance, our Clean Flake product portfolio. So we have taken our material science and put materials into the space that allows, for instance, for PET flakes to go back into the industry stream again. So our material science has brought us so far, and we continue that journey. Now it's also time to look at scope 1 and 2s.
Very good. So we got one more. That's great. Please keep on being active and submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. What is your perspective on the results of COP26? And do you see Avery and other industry players joining the now more frequently planned yearly meetings? So COP26, we will have actually, I will propose to leave this question for a bit later, because we will get Sam joining and talking all about legislation. So please stay with us, if you don't mind, Niels, of course.
I'm absolutely fine.
Great, let's keep this as a cliffhanger. Very good, thank you very much.
If there's no further question, I'm going to pass on the clicker to Natalia, who will talk us through the next topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niels. So before I start, I would like to share with you, I've taken my family, my kids, to a ice skating rink this weekend. And every time I step on ice, I think of the moment when I was 9 years old, and my father would take me to a lake, frozen lake in winter next to a beautiful forest, and he would be fishing in the center, and I would be ice skating circles around him. And that is a beautiful memory that I try to pass on to my kids. And you know, when I was there last weekend, I thought the circle repeats. We try to pass on the memories, the learnings, the love for nature in this case, to the next generation. And so I do now the same my father did to me, I do it to my kids. I try to teach them how great it is to be in the nature, to enjoy that. And that's the same thing with sustainability. If we truly care for generation to come, we need to take, even with the small steps, here and there, showing how beautiful it is, and creating this circularity, that loop of caring and sharing with each other. So with that, allow me to share a bit more on the ecosystem engagement. So why is sustainability important to us, and what do we do? So talking about this sustainable circle or the loop, sustainability is a big word, but there are three elements in it. It's all about economic sustainability. It should make sense economically. It should be sustainable on the long term. It's about social aspect of it. We need to care about the places we operate or work in. We need to care about people. And it's about environmental sustainability. What is the impact our production, our operations are making on our planet? All three together make a complete loop, a complete circle, and complete the picture. And now you see more and more that there is indeed an increasing priority on sustainability. Global warming and, of course, the growing population. These two go hand in hand. There are so many people, and well, there will be many more by 2030, as you can see. And we all need a lot, we consume a lot, and we also produce a lot of waste. Taking care of that and creating a system that is sustainable for the long term is critical. Also, if you look at this year United Nations report around the climate impact that we as humanity are making, it's severe. There is a true urgency to act now. And luckily, governments are stepping up, so we have quite some legislation in place, like European Green Deal or the Circular Economy Action Plan, as you can see, which has been revised recently, to make it, to support the industry. You also see lots of local, country-specific legislations or initiatives coming into place, and you see more and more active NGOs supporting the movement. But then the last piece is even more important, because this is where we and you are responsible for. And this is the industry alignment. We need to work together more frequently nowadays. It's not only about making product, but it's also about how you use it, how you dispose of it, and what do you make afterwards. And therefore, a producer like Avery Dennison, you as a label printer or brand, we all need to work together. But why focus on sustainability? There are different reasons for that, and if I start from the first one, it's all about competitive advantage and a brand value. Today, yes, but tomorrow you will not have a business if you don't have sustainability focus. So today, yes, you can differentiate because you are making efforts, but tomorrow it is just the norm of doing business. The second reason is really meeting the consumer demands. Consumers nowadays, and you can read by examples, whether it's millennials or Generation Z, they are not accepting products which are not sustainable. They want to know, where does this product come from, what has his journey been? And it is really important that the companies are truly and are transparent about what they are producing. Increase efficiency, that's another reason, and think about clean energy, using wind energy or solar energy to improve your productions. That's a move towards sustainability that will also save you on the long term. The youngsters, the young talent that is out there will also join you faster if you are active in sustainability. And needless to say, focus on the sustainability will create new opportunities for you as well. So, bottom line, we know it all, right? But there is a gap between knowing and doing something. And this is the gap that we all need to bridge together. And just to share with you regarding, so we are Avery Dennison, our customers label printers, you also are more and more interested in sustainability. But the brands, another part of the value chain, they also say that they aim either to recycle or reuse or do more compostability, biodegradability of their materials by a specific target. And please have a look at the dates. It's just around the corner. 2025, 2030, there is no really time to wait. And we can help and support these brands to reach these targets. Watch out, brands have not been sitting still, right? They have been doing a lot. And you see the fact that we as consumers got used to the greenish bottles of bottled water shows we are accepting the change. We are accepting the recycled content materials as consumers. But the focus was very much on, let's say, bottles. But now how about the label? You can actually make the product offering more complete if you combine the two. Because the problem these brands are facing is the availability of recycled content materials. There is not so much. Why not? Because there is a lot of pollution still in the system, in the recycling stream. And therefore, choosing the label, choosing the inks, choosing the adhesive that are corresponding to that recycling stream should be the focus more and more for today and tomorrow. Therefore, I would encourage you, let's work together, let's connect, create three-party collaborations, and work to bring true solutions to the market and to the consumers. At Avery Dennison, we used to work in the internal circle, as you can see. So we would produce our products, we would bring it to a label printer, converter, then it would go to the end user, consumer would consume it, the product would end up somewhere, hopefully in the recycling stream, and then we start the circle one more time again, starting with our supplier. But because of the challenges that the recycling of the packaging is having nowadays, we have broadened the circle. And we are now working more and more with organizations that are active or are helping to align the industry to create the products that really fit the needs and the requirements of sustainable product offering. And you can see a few of the names here. I'm sure you, being in the industry, they are all familiar to you. So what are the main trends in sustainable packaging? You can see there are 5. And the first one, I believe, is a very important one. Apparently, at the moment you start designing your product, the decision that you make at the design phase accounts for 80% on the final meaning of this product to sustainability. So really starting thinking at the design phase where this product will end up, how will the collection, sorting, recycling stream look of this product is very important. Another subject or another trend is recycled content. So at the moment you bring products into recycling, you hope to get a recycled content materials out of it. And as you can see, European Union and local organizations have put a target of 30% by 2030, for instance. Still, personally, I see not so much movement there. I still think we could do more, specifically on labels. Bottles, yes, there is way more recycled content in bottles or in the packaging containers. But the label part could still use more of recycled content, and there is a lot to offer there. Monomaterial, that's another trend. And it's mentioned here around flexibles, but I could even add that there is also a monomaterial part when it comes to HDPE and PP containers. But specifically here, it's all about limiting the amount of layers from a different type of materials, different type of polymers into a same type of polymer structures. Giving you an example, wet wipes products, for instance, have multiple layers, and going from that multiple layers to the single polypropylene or polyethylene type of products is the trend that we see going forward, which helps the industry to have less contamination basically in the stream, and therefore sort and recycle that part better. At this moment, it's still a bigger challenge, the flexibles recycling. Another one is all around bioplastics, and here I would say at Avery Dennison we focus very much on the mass balance solutions, where we try to use byproducts, giving an example, tall oil or kitchen oil, into our products, and therefore having a third-party certification, ISCC certification it's called, to provide products which are being chemically recycled into the market and incorporated into our labels. And the last one is about compostable packaging. It is listed here because it's also one of the focus areas of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, for instance. And at this moment, the industry-wide focus is very much around industrial composting. However, there are countries like France, for instance, who are leading and are, for instance, asking consumers to move to the home composting solutions. And that's another challenge for us as an industry, to create products that perform in the lifetime of the product and in the end are home compostable. So quite some developments ahead. And this is another, I would say, a sixth trend that is emerging and becoming, I would say, maybe a summary of the previous five. It's really around the impact on the environment, specifically a journey towards carbon neutrality or carbon zero. It's all about how can we ensure that we are limiting the negative impact that we are creating on the environment with all the productions and the industry that we are in. And there are three areas to focus on: scope 1 and 2 emissions. This is where you as the company, or we as our company, can do something around. So these are the activities related to our production, to transport, to our facilities, where we could make a change and make differences, make these facilities more sustainable. And the last part is scope 3 emission, which is a very difficult one, because it's not only about us, but it's about our value chain. So it's about you, it's about the product, where does it end, it's about recycling of this product. And this whole part accounts, for some companies, for more than 70% of overall carbon footprint. And that's another reason for us to join and start working more collaboratively and more together. So this is today. How about tomorrow? There are 3 steps we can make. First, let's start rethinking packaging. What can we do to improve packaging design to make it more sustainable? Is it the format? Is it the type of materials we use? And think about the previous trends: recycled, using recycled content, good for recycling. So all that should be taken account already now. Let's also rethink product innovation. So next to packaging, and you can see in a nice image there, we are transporting so much water and liquids around. Can we think of innovations that would bring liquid to a solid state? Maybe back to the old days, having powder and creating your own drink with it. You never know. But what else could we do there to rethink product innovation to have a positive impact on sustainability? And the last one, we need to start thinking differently in terms of how we do business. So it's a good example could be the rise and increase in returnable and reusable systems. So and you see that more and more happening in Scandinavia, but I also hear a little bit in Western Europe, but it's only starting up. So more and more reusing packaging next to recycling is becoming and will become key. And please, we are here for you as Avery Dennison, whether it's a product training, whether it's sharing all we know around legislation related to packaging and sustainability, whether it is a collaboration altogether, or maybe just a glossary of difficult terms that the sustainability theme is bringing to us, understanding words like ISCC, biomass balance. It has been a challenge for us in the beginning, Niels, right? And the last point is really, we have an extensive R&D team, research and development team, who managed to mimic the industry requirements and standards on how to test and validate if the product would be suitable or would potentially meet the requirements. So please reach out. We are here to support, and let's join forces also to support brands on their sustainability journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. We have some questions coming in from the audience, so I'll just raise a few of them to you. We have a question on the view on chemical versus mechanical recycling, which is something we're going to address later on in on the days we're here, but maybe just a quick comment from your side on this topic.
Yes, correct. I believe on Wednesday and on Thursday we'll hear more from the experts there, but I can give you an overall perspective indeed. Chemical recycling and mechanical recycling will coexist. So if you look at mechanical recycling, it is definitely a very good way, and it's less energy extensive as the chemical recycling. Therefore, it would have a preference. But you cannot recycle everything mechanically. Therefore, both will coexist. What I can mention is that when you have mechanical recycling, the challenge with it is you don't get a pure, beautiful quality of virgin materials that you're used to. So just like a bottle becomes greenish, same with the label, it will have visual imperfections. If you use chemical recycling, you don't have that issue. You have beautiful, just like virgin material. Also, you would have food approval with chemical recycling that you don't have with mechanical. Therefore, I believe both will coexist, but to which proportion? That's the recycler to tell, I think.
It's a very, very busy space. There's so much happening in this period of time about recycling. There's a question a little bit linked to the topic you raised, where we need to be able to reach our 2030 goals by having 100% products with recycled content. If we are to achieve this, we are to have more recycled material in there. There's a question here about the cost perspective on materials that has recycled or various forms of materials types in there that drive the sustainability discussion, because typically it's not at the same price point today. How is the market, how is our customers and their customers reacting to this?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And I would say in the past it has been a big discussion that everybody wanted to be sustainable, but nobody wanted to pay for it. I believe the things are changing because the availability is better now than it used to be 2-3 years ago.
Yes.
So you have more material available that you can source, therefore it drives the cost down. And it's in the end a question really, are you true about your sustainability targets? If you are driving the cost down, you know that this product requires a process, a system to go through. So that's about finding that balance. And I would say at Every Denizen we have a wide portfolio, so you will definitely find something that fits your target. But ask yourself how critical or how true are you to yourself if you want to pay the same or even less for it, for a more sustainable material.
We do see that. We also see that there is a increasing pull from the market that are requesting various solutions, and more often we hear, of course, price matters, but let's not start with the price, but let's start with the solution. So let's talk about the solution, what is available, and then together, as you also raised, let's find solutions together, because we cannot sort this on our own. It's an industry challenge, our customers and their customers as well.
And Niels, to your point, you mentioned solution part. What we do more and more, it's not the label, it's not only a front, the face stock. And while what we do more and more, we use a recycled content face stock, but we combine it with adhesive that has a specific purpose. You mentioned Clean Flake before, or there will be more presented on Wednesday. It's the full combination, it's the full solution that makes a difference. So indeed, have a look on the functionality next to sustainability as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to catch up because there's quite some good questions. There's a general questions to us, both of us, but perhaps maybe to me as I presented it, if we are on track with the current goal setting for 22 and 25. I would say yes. We have, in terms of the portfolio we are launching, we do have a very good track record of material that we are offering. In terms of the journey towards 2030, I will be honest and say that this is a journey, but if we don't start it, we won't reach it. So we're going to set the baseline and work not towards it, but away from it to ensure that we reach our 2030 goals. So in all honesty, I cannot sit here and vouch completely that how we're going to achieve it, it's a bit of a moonshot, but we're going to achieve it because we have set these goals. And within Avery Dennison, we are renowned. If we set a target, we run for it. So we will hit this target for sure. But it's potentially coming in steps where we, for a period of time, go and analyze, and then we move again. So yes, we're going to get there. I don't see a long range of more questions. So the question is if we are taking potentially the next presentation.
And please make sure that you do ask your questions. So
yes.
At the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box. This is your moment.
We are attempting to make this as interactive as possible. So do sincerely feel free to place the questions in the Q&A, and we will try to cover them either here on or afterwards. And I get note that there are questions coming in. This is good.
So it's always good to remind people where the Q&A box is.
Yeah. So there's a question coming to the mentioning you were making about the brand names, about their sustainability targets. There's a question here. What are the brand's action towards traceability of recycled label use? So anything you can share on that? What brands are doing in terms of traceability of recycled?
Yeah, traceability. Traceability and measuring, that's a very interesting topic. I'll be honest with you, I have a feeling that there are only few brands who have truly taken label as the focus area at this moment, and more are evaluating. But the focus of our brands was very much on the bottle itself, on the container, because that creates the largest yield. This is where you can say, I did something and it brought me so much savings or the benefit for the cardboard footprint. The label hasn't been yet a very big focus area, and that's what we aim to change.
Yes, also because the label can, as you already shared with us, can actually hinder. If you don't do, for instance, the eco-design route or you go monomaterial route, choosing the right material combination is key to make this success for us all. I'm having a question here, which is about if we could talk more about legislation. There is actually a session straight after this one, which is solely about the legislation element. So I think we will pause this question for this topic. So it's maybe a good lead into this one. I also see, and I need to see better, there was a question on how we are, in terms of footprint, when Avery Dennison will be ready to share the carbon footprint or the emission footprint for each label. We have a commitment to do this by entering into business with Carbon Trust. So Carbon Trust will be our partners for the carbon emission per label. And this tool is going to be ready by Q1 22. We will not have data points on every material type we produce, but we're going to have availability of calculating. So if you have a specific need, we can go and do it. We can actually do it today. We use our green print tool for this one. Our aim is to add this to our data sheets as we go along, but it's a significant journey to calculate all this. So therefore, it's going to take some time. But the tool availability is scheduled to Q1 22, and then it's a journey from there to start adding it into our data points. So we're going to have that. And feel free, Natalia, to share if you have any. I'm just looking if we have more questions. Yeah, there's a question. I honestly struggle myself to fully comply, but I don't know, do you have any insights if the emission is different between a mechanical and a chemical recycled material?
So, exactly. So I know that the chemical recycling is more CO2 intensive.
Yeah.
So therefore mechanical is more preferred. But again, it doesn't give you all the properties that the chemical could give. For instance, food approval or the pure, beautiful look as just like virgin materials have. So therefore, both will coexist, but I would hope there will be, percentage-wise, there will be more mechanical recycling happening.
All right. There's quite a lot of questions about recycling, which is good. There's a question again about initiatives of third-party labs for recycle issues. There are various forms of labs, but we are probably going more the route of entering with industry partners. We are members of C-Lab, we are members of CFlex, we are members of all major institutions and associations in this field. So we're going that route. There's currently not one single party in here. EU is working on various forms of legislation and taxonomy that we of course are monitoring very carefully to see how we can meet and adhere to these, but also facilitate that a certain standard could be set for these labels, so we all talk the same language in this optic.
Exactly. And next to that, we participate closely to understand how the design guidelines are being created. We saw that it is really important for the label player or material science company like we to be involved because we have the knowledge of adhesives and we have the knowledge of the coating process, so we can definitely bring value in this conversation, but also do testing to validate what would work, what wouldn't. And that's the collaboration which is very, very critical nowadays.
We're going to talk more about collaboration as we go along because this is key. We said it several times. We are not able to completely move this significant challenge alone. It has to be together with our partners and your customers. So it's going to be a team effort, so to speak, to achieve these goals for sure. Again, looking to timing and if there's any further questions. Yeah, there's a comment again which is maybe worth sharing to the audience, but we are aware of this, that impurities in mechanical recycled materials, which can be an obstruction in some printing techniques. I do recognize this, but if I can add an anecdote to this one, we are actually being asked on occasion to make the material look more recycled, especially because brand owners are looking to bank on the fact that they are using recycled materials. And if the materials are looking too pure, too virgin, it actually dilutes the discussion a little bit. So we have been launching various forms of filmic material containing recycled content, and the feedback was, could we not make it look a little bit more impure?
Yes. And to be honest, at a certain moment it's the question of excuses. We launched recycled cotton materials quite a time ago, and then everybody was asking for them, but then no demand. And we thought, how come? Yeah, impurities, it's not easy to print. We need a top coat. So we had added a top coat to it to make it happen. And in the end, it's really about the choice. And that helps already. So the top coated materials, recycled materials with the top coat already help when printing. But that's something the brand and the label printer needs to accept. Mechanical recycled materials come with impurities, they come with imperfections. Some are, and you cannot really control that process. An anecdote you mentioned before, we had operators on our lines, they were actually stopping rolls of materials going out of the manufacturing facilities because of these impurities, because they are not used to that level of quality leaving the production facilities. So we actually have been doing quite some internal training of operators to say, this is a recycled content, okay, that's okay, it can leave the house.
It's acceptable to send out material that is not absolutely pure. Yeah. We have talked to various colleagues in the industry also about our business development teams, about going to designers and having them embrace the impurities, adding them into an element of the design, so that it tells the story. We have the Acros range, which is material that comes from barley, from grapes, from various citrus, for instance. If you build that story into the the storytelling on the actual labels. It's actually an easier sell. And then most likely the price is less so of a discussion because you're certainly telling a very compelling story.
Yeah, and also talking about recycled content, we've made the decision not to go to up to 30% because this is the moment where we said we can guarantee a continuous quality and level of quality. The higher you go, the more impurities you get, and then the more difficult it is to control and source it. So I remember we had in the past question for 100% recycled content material. Yes, we can get it, but the consistency of getting that quality of material on having you performing the same way in the press, that's a difficult one.
It is. We get a question here if we as Avery Dennison are joining hands with industry associations. And the first step I will say yes. I have lost count about how many various associations, but it's double digit that we are members of. We were also founding fathers together with other industry players for CELAB. For instance, we are very closely associated with the EU taxonomy that is coming up now. We are talking to various partners in the industry, so very much so. And FINAT themselves are also playing a big part here, and we are also teaming with FINAT, discussing these topics to have a joint approach to this one. So yes, I can answer yes to this question.
Very true. Yeah. And not only industry related when it comes to packaging materials, but also organizations like EPBP, European PET Bottle Platform, which is more on the brand owner side, or the recycler organization, that's also where we are part in. Yeah.
There's a spin-off question to the clean flag, and now you mentioned EPBP. There's a question if clean flag is recognized by EPBP as a material.
Yeah, it is. We will get a clean flag expert to you on Wednesday, maybe even tomorrow you hear more on it. From what I remember, and I'm not the product manager of that portfolio, but it is in the process of qualifying. So that's, I know for sure, on the EPBP side. Yeah.
All right. Good. I am again running out of questions. I can find questions, no problem. But in terms of the chat, and grateful for the many questions we're getting here, we can absolutely talk very long time about these topics, and we're going to do that for the next remainder of today and the next 3 days. Please keep the questions coming in the chat for the next sessions. The next session we're going to have is going to be about the legislation, about what work we're doing with the associations. You're going to hear more about this one. So I am going to pass on. Yeah. So the next we're going to talk about is how regulations on CO2 packaging and recycling is going to impact all of our businesses, and how we in Avery Dennison are addressing these topics. And for this presentation, we have the pleasure of inviting Sam O'Keefe, who is our Vice President of R&D for Label and Graphics Materials Europe.
Thanks, Niels. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, let me introduce myself. I'm responsible for R&D in Avery Dennison and MENA. You may think that's not an obvious choice for somebody to talk about legislation, but sustainability is agnostic, completely agnostic of functions. It touches all of us, so I'll talk to you now about the legislation, upcoming legislation and current legislation for sustainability. So this is a snapshot of where we are today regarding the regulations and those which will impact us. It's a pretty dry topic, so I'm going to cover the headlines quite briefly and then open it up for questions, and hopefully that should keep the energy levels quite high. We'll be talking about decarbonisation, recycling, waste reduction, chemical safety, all of these being part of the Green Deal. Some of what I will mention has been touched on already by Niels and Natalia, but hopefully that will help to reinforce the message. Let me just move on. Okay, there we go. So the Green Deal, it was launched in 2019 with the aim of making Europe the first carbon neutral continent by 2050. And this is a big task. There's no denying that. The task has been broken down into specific areas in order to make it more manageable. The main areas are climate action, clean energy, sustainable industry, buildings and renovations, sustainable mobility, eliminating pollution, farm to fork, preserving biodiversity, R&D, good topic, and preventing unfair competition from carbon leakage, i.e. Ensuring cross-border alignment with our neighbours outside the EU. If we look at climate action, which is the hot topic of 2021, then the targets require us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 55%. So that's 55% reduction by 2030 relative to 1990. I think Neil's already mentioned the fact that it's not always clear what the pathway will be. Member states haven't made it clear how they're going to get to the 2030 goal in each of their regions, but projections do already show that a step change is needed, even taking into account the positive impact of COVID on emissions, if I can say that way. We still need a step change. Emissions in the EU have decreased by 30% already between 1990 and 2020. And like I said, we've had an enforced lifestyle change, which has actually helped things. Every relevant EU law is currently being reviewed to ensure that it's aligned with this Green Deal goal. And that's, you may have heard it, it's called the Fit for 55 initiative. Nothing to do with middle-age exercise, it's to do with the Green Deal. And three key EU policies address greenhouse gas emissions, which are the EU emissions trading system, so the ETS, the effort sharing legislation, and the legislation on emissions and removals from land use and forestry. So land use is positive, and then obviously greenhouse gas emissions from our industrial exercises aren't, and travel aren't so positive. So the emissions trading system covers large power stations, large industrial plants, lots of large in here, large district heating plants and aviation, and it represents about 40% of total EU emissions. Limits are set by or set for organisations, and they either have to meet them, trade them off, or obviously take a penalty if they exceed them. Emissions have decreased significantly since 2005, driven mostly by decarbonisation of the power sector. National greenhouse gas reduction targets are governed by the effort sharing legislation, so that's the countrywide targets. In each country, there are targets there for transport, buildings, smaller industry, agriculture and waste, which we'll touch on later. Emissions have fallen by 15% since 2005, which is significantly less than the 40% reduction from the emissions trading scheme. Land and forestry, so the trees around us, in the EU, it represents a net carbon sink, which is equivalent to about 7% of greenhouse gas emissions. And there's a steep target here. It's to achieve climate neutrality in combined land use, forestry and agriculture by 2035 in the EU. So as we sort of touched on, greenhouse gases are generated by pretty much everything that we do. And so the subsequent focus areas target the biggest contributing activities, first being clean energy. So clean energy speaks for itself. It covers residential, industrial use, it covers all forms of transport. Energy production and energy use account for 75% of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions. We'll all have seen the publicity around the intent to move towards renewable energy. It's already been mentioned today, less use of fossil fuels, i.e. oil and gas, and wind and solar are the big renewable focus as of today. As Niels has noted, in Avery Dennison, we have a 2030 goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 70%, scope 1 and 2. Relative to our 2015 emissions. So again, as he's mentioned, scope 1 emissions are those we've got control of. Scope 2 are those from the energy and services we use, and scope 3 are upstream and downstream of us in our value chain. For the Green Deal per se, buildings and renovations are a focus area. I wasn't really sure whether to mention this, but actually it will touch on us and our industry. The construction products regulation is being reviewed to ensure that building regulations support greenhouse gas reduction. So this will connect with the use of renewable energy and will be encouraged to reduce the footprint of our buildings and our plants by adopting the principle of passive buildings, both for new builds and for renovations. So for those of you who aren't in the building sector, passive buildings are those with a target of net zero carbon footprints. And this is an initiative which has been ongoing for probably 20 years or so. Sustainable mobility targets alternative fuels. It targets increased use of rail, intelligent transport systems, and energy offsetting for aviation. And then for us, very specifically, much closer to home, industry, it accounts for 20% of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to clean energy, we need to get better at making full use of what we manufacture in order to take our levels down, which means reducing material use, reusing products and materials wherever we can, recycling wherever possible in order to minimize our impact. And this is the focus of the Circular Economy Action Plan. Extending product lifespans has a direct impact on the carbon footprint of the products we make. And the more that we can reuse and recycle linked to the circularity, the lower the carbon footprint. The Green Deal, which, I mean, it's all encompassing, it also includes a zero pollution action plan. I'll go into this in a bit more detail shortly, but this is where the chemical strategy for sustainability sits. So there is a high level of activity around the Green Deal. COP26 was already mentioned today, and obviously that's a couple of weeks of intense activity to try and focus upon it. The deadline of 2050 may be some way off, but there is an interim target of 2030, and that's not very far away at all. Many countries are already implementing measures to ensure compliance. Some are more stringent than others. For us, impacting our industry, France, for example, is already implementing regulations around targeting increased use of recycled packaging in food contact. And of course, then that means that we have to make sure that the recycled safe for food use. Let me just move on to the next slide. So you can see here by the end of next year, so this is a Green Deal timeline just for up to end of 2022. So by the end of next year, there should be proposals in place concerning many areas which impact us, which impact our industry. Bio-based materials, microplastics, emissions, packaging waste, food contact regulation, and also modification of REACH to include chemical sustainability. So there's a high intensity of activity. This takes us to the chemical strategy for sustainability. This is one of the aspects of the Green Deal which does directly impact our industry. The aim is to achieve a toxic-free environment. So that's quite a big ask. And it's a toxic-free environment for end users and producers. So it goes one step beyond product compliance. It's focused on processing, it's focused on manufacture, and it's focused on the product. It's a key pillar of the Green Deal, and it will be enabled through a revision of REACH. Currently, chemicals are regulated according to specific chemistry. So if we want to eliminate a hazard or reduce a risk, we would look at one particular product. We would identify what the main risks would be for people or for the product related to that chemistry, and then go through the process of through REACH to control its or regulate its use. This is a relatively slow process. And so what the upcoming legislation will do will be to take products according to their risk category. So that could be carcinogens, so cancer-reducing or cancer-causing chemicals. And then the whole branch of chemicals which fall into that hazard category would be regulated at the same time, irrespective of the chemistry. Cancer-causing chemicals are often used in the manufacture of polymers, well, pretty much everything actually, if I'm brutally honest. So when we end up trying to restrict their use in finished products and in manufacturing processes, we'll end up targeting pretty much everything. The reason for doing this is to enable the process to be done much more quickly. So the feeling in Brussels from REACH is that whilst for us at the other end of the chain, it may seem to have been quite impactful and quite fast, as far as Brussels was concerned, it's actually been happening quite slowly. So they want to be able to go at a much greater pace. And as with REACH, the EU will also ensure that we don't have impact from products outside of the EU. So there'll be some cross-border regulations as well. These regulations that are listed here, many are already in place, but most of them will be revised to ensure alignment with the chemical sustainability aspects of the Green Deal. So the impact of the strategy is going to be far-reaching. There will be a global impact. It will move at a far faster rate than the REACH rollout, and it will encourage us to move towards eco-design, use of safer chemicals wherever possible. So the intent is absolutely 100% admirable. The impact will be significant. So then that takes us to eco-design. If I can move the slide on. So the Eco-Design Directive launched in 2009. It's aligned with a chemical strategy for sustainability as it considers the environmental impacts of manufacture, including emissions, but also extends to recyclability and waste. So this drives us to consider the ecological impacts of the products we develop and early at the design stage, i.e. not as an afterthought. It's been shown that 80% of the product impact is initiated at the design stage. So when we design products appropriately, we can positively impact the amount of energy used in their manufacture, their compatibility with chemical recycling processes, including matching the chemistry of the product to the chemistry of the packaging. So recycling processes, we already talked about clean flake for PET recycling. And Natalia also mentioned monochemistry. So we're seeing this more and more from brands and from the industry per se, that if you can match the chemistry, so you have a single chemistry of the product you're trying to recycle, it simplifies the process. And then design for recycling, we can also look into the longevity of products. So we can ensure information is readily available so the product, the packaging designer can use durable products if durability of packaging is required for reuse or for multiple use. And as we said previously, if we can extend the lifespan of products, then that's very good for the carbon footprint. So for us in Avery Dennison, it means that we focus on manufacturing in reducing our waste, using less of each material, and then also less energy. This protects resources, this reduces emissions. We work with the philosophy that products should be of an appropriate size, such that we minimize material use and fuel consumption during manufacture, and then subsequent transport to reduce the CO2 emissions, all of which have an impact. We focus on materials which are easily reused or recycled, and for that reason we work closely with the industry associations, a question which I think I heard earlier on, representing relevant materials for us and ensure that we play an active part. And I can endorse what Neil said, we really do play an active part here. We don't sit on the sidelines. We're involved in many of the working groups. We recognise it's important to understand the needs of the industry in order to be able to design the right products to enable reuse or recyclability. And we see quite clearly that only by working together can we, all of us in the ecosystem, be more circular, more sustainable. Circularity requires collaboration from the whole value chain, from the raw material to the end of life of the product. And all of us, the entire value chain, we need to commit to go in the same direction. We need to have the same goals. Like I said at the beginning, sustainability is completely agnostic. It's also important that converters collaborate here, because the inks will also have an impact. The use of the right inks and printing technologies will enable circularity, but similarly, even though the ink may seem to be a small part of the product, it can have a strong impact. To ensure easy disassembly, we need to use materials that are easily identified, reused or recycled. And to close this loop, we're continuously working to increase the recycled content of all our filmic and paper labels, with the proviso that it's linked to quality. We recognise that requirement for percentage recycled content translates to the components of an entire product, including the packaging, and not just the product overall. We're well underway on this journey. As Natalia commented, we've got many products with ever-increasing recycled content. We are introducing biomaterials where we can, but only when we can ensure they're not based on food stock. This is a growing area of interest in the entire ecosystem. It's seen as a means to keep plastic, but not plastic as we know it. In this definition, we don't include biodegradable and compostable materials. They often need special treatment, special collection systems, and actually currently they disrupt many recycling processes. And then lastly, on to innovation. We see that technological innovations can optimize product efficiency and sustainability. Focus on sustainability in turn drives product innovations. So the two are interlinked. Back to my introduction, it's a win-win for all of us. Following these design principles does require a holistic approach in the sense that we have to not only factor in the raw materials used and the product manufacture, but also the distribution, the use, and the end-of-life planning of the finished product. Which brings us, if I can move on, to upcoming regulations. Both regarding recycling and minimisation of packaging waste, we have the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, PPWD, 2018. It is in its own right a revision, and it's under revision again, as packaging waste volumes are still increasing in Europe. We're some way off the 2030 targets of 55% plastic packaging recycled and 85% paper and cardboard waste recycled. We're not there yet, and unless we do something different, we're not going to get there. So the revision is actually still under discussion. It's not fully clear what it will include. We mentioned earlier on that we're active in industry groups, and this is one place where we have also been active. So we have been involved in the revision. We should have more clarity as to what exactly will be included in Q1 2022. The process is running slightly more slowly than anticipated. But what is likely from the ongoing discussions is that we will be obliged to minimise packaging waste, and the terminology here is minimum void volumes, so the packaging should be as small as possible. We should need to implement design for recycling guidelines based on classification of packaging according to the recyclability of the full package. So that includes the label, and in case of bottles, that also includes the cap. So products will be, or packaging, I should say, will be classified according to more than 95% being easily recyclable or less. So if less than 95% is easily recyclable, the product's packaging will be classified as red, and this is where the packaging engineers will play a large part. And if the recycling is if the product is fully recyclable, then it will be green, and somewhere between the two will be amber. Mandatory recycled content regulations are already known to be imminent. So, for example, from 2025, each EU member state must ensure that PET bottles contain at least 25% recycled content as an average throughout the region, throughout the nation. And from 2030, this increases to 30% and applies to all single-use beverage bottles. So the incentive to comply and to ensure that we don't use red classifications any more so than absolutely essential will be linked to the national extended producer responsibility schemes. So these are already established in many countries. In essence, the taxable impact will be determined at the design stage, i.e. packaging with a red classification will have the maximum tax and green classifications will incur the minimum tax. This should enable an effective control loop and ensure maximum recyclability and minimum waste generation, both determined at the product development stage. I see that for the EPR schemes, some countries are already looking to move ahead. So this is, I think I saw most recently, it was to do with litter. So trying to bring in EPR schemes literally for consumers leaving rubbish, packaging waste lying around if it's not handleable. So on a national level, it will be controlled by the nation. It won't be controlled by the EU. It'll just be guided by the EU. The Circular Economy Action Plan proposes specific goals along with revised legislative proposals to encourage waste reduction. And these include long-term recycling targets for municipal waste, packaging waste, landfill reduction, EPR schemes, and simplification and harmonisation of definitions and calculation methods. And this is one of the challenges that the PPWD has had in trying to ensure how we classify whether or not a product is recyclable, seeing as it's to do with scale and it's to do with national customs and practice. So it's not surprising it's such a difficult challenge. The foundation of the EU waste framework is the 5-step waste hierarchy established in the Waste Management Directive, the Waste Framework Directive. Establishes an order of preference for managing and disposal of waste. It explains when waste ceases to be waste and when it becomes a secondary raw material, and how to distinguish between waste and byproducts. It also introduces the polluter pays principle and the extended producer responsibility. The implementation report for the packaging waste references the PPWD, And so we do find that the Waste Framework Directive, the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme, and the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, they're all interlinked. And it comes back to the beginning of the topic, it comes back to the Green Deal. They're all interlinked under the Green Deal. So in summary, we all have to work together. All members of our ecosystem, we need to work together to ensure that energy usage and waste are minimised and that recyclability is enhanced. It's a journey. We're not at the end of the road. We're probably not even halfway there yet, but we can see that we can get there if we work together and if we use eco-design principles. So we have many options available to us in the industry, in the designs of our packaging and of our products. We would love to work with the ecosystem to come to a common level of understanding, but we also ask that if you see any evolutions at the national level or something which you believe should be acted upon, then you come back to us as well so that we can work together. So that's really what I wanted to say. Thanks. Any questions before I hand over to Niels, who I believe is following on from me?
Thank you, Sam. It's good to see that there is a legislation in place addressing the sustainability and improvements the packaging world should take. It is not easy, as I can see. It's rather complex and difficult to understand. So it's great that we have specialists that can help us out here. And we have a few questions, Sam, for you. One is, where can I find more information about compliance and regulations? Do you provide any support?
We can, yes. Either if you go through your local sales guy or come to us, then we can offer support. We have a compliance team, we have a legal team, we have an R&D team, we have a sales team. Yes. If you give us more specific information, we'll be able to support you.
Thank you, Sam. Maybe to support on that question, I can point to we have a compliance webpage, which is constantly and quite recently updated again with the latest legislation and compliance statements, and you can pull them there. You can actually get a specified sheet specifically on what topics you want us to cover, and we make it bespoke on your name, address, and so forth. And as already said, there's also an email address you can write to, and we will come back to with the specific questions you might have us to answer.
Thank you, Niels. And Sam, one more question that I kept from the previous session of this afternoon. What is our perspective on COP26? And do we see us as Every Denison joining the monthly or yearly meetings and participating in that discussion? Any perspective from your side?
Well, COP26 is just really reinforced, from my perspective anyway, maybe I shouldn't speak on behalf of the business, it's reinforced the Paris Agreement, the fact that we need to work together to try and achieve what it is we set out to do, the fact that the more affluent nations need to support the poorer nations, the fact that climate change is absolutely critical and we need to move much more speedily than we've done so before. We know that it takes a long time to align on such big topics because the COP26 was extended, as I recollect. So for us, I mean, it's 100% linked to the Green Deal. I mean, the Green Deal really takes what were the key directions, even down to the level of funding it. And it means that if we align with the Green Deal and we support all the European countries to achieve that, then we're aligned with what came out of COP26.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Absolutely.
Maybe I can add.
Yes, Niels.
Maybe if I can add a comment, and I agree with Sam on this one. One thing that I also find interesting is that if you look to what the UN has put out, the SDGs, the Sustainability Development Goals, it's actually the first time in my time that we had a common language to talk about sustainability. It is so that even my wife, my kids know about the Sustainability Development Goals. I see them in public space and they're being referred to. So what COP is underlining is that there is an absolute need for us all as communities, private individuals, as businesses to do something. And I just think COP just emphasizes that need.
Thank you, Niels. So we have one more question for you, and that's related to mass balance approach. The question is, does it have a legal regulatory basis? Or are there any documents explaining how to take into account recycled content coming from mass balance approach?
Well, it's not my forte, but I do not believe there is a legal basis for it. So mass balance, as I understand, is an evolving way of thinking to try and ensure that if you take a macro approach, if you recycle 10 bottles out of 100 bottles, for example, you can say that 10% is recycled. It may not mean that at the very specific micro level, 10% of what you're looking at has got recycled content. So as far as I understand, and I'm not a legal person, but as far as I understand, there isn't any legal basis behind it yet, but it's evolving.
Yes, and from our perspective, we really follow the ISCC certification route. So we get ourselves third-party audited, and therefore also suppliers. And usually the way it works is that the supplier, and then we as the user, and then later the label printer, maybe end user, if you want to transfer that accreditation across the chain, you need to also comply with that audit. And that's related to mass balance chemical recycling, indeed. Great, thank you. And there is one last question, and again, I remind the audience, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. This is your chance to interact with our colleagues. The question is, Sam, very product related, so I think somebody is really into cold paper wash-off, I would say. Is thermal paper with WX6030 adhesive approved for Europool system? And I can actually answer that, Sam, for you, if you want. Because we have, this is one of the latest additions to adhesive portfolio, and indeed Europool system, but there is more. There is IFCO in Europe, and there is Returpack, I believe, in Sweden. And there is a range of products that we have approved with this specific adhesive for the use in the returnable, reusable systems. So I would encourage you to go on our website or check with your sales representative and to get that list of that overview of specific products per each user approved. And we got one more, Sam. So you see, the question is, are lawmakers aware that countries make different laws on labeling in their country language, like waste explanation, which makes it for global companies really hard to line up with? Is legislation working on EU-wide standard solutions? So it's EU versus regional, that's the question, a local.
All I can really comment on is from the PPWD perspective, there was a very strong feeling that Europe couldn't do it as one, and that responsibility had to be given to the individual member states. So unfortunately, I think we're just going to have to be very aware that even though we're all in Europe, it might be Europe from a Spanish perspective or from a French perspective or from an Italian perspective, for example. So that I can't see standards coming through specifically.
Thank you very much, Sam, and thank you, audience, for asking the questions. With this, we would like to pass on to a last session of today, which completes the circle, and it's all about being transparent and being proactive in addressing the waste we are as industry responsible for. And for that, I would love to ask Niels to tell us more around the future of liner and matrix waste.
Thank you very much. As already said, I'm going to talk you through what we are doing both individually as Avery Dennison and what we are looking into as an industry. But before going into the specific details, I wanted to show you a few details, a few slides about why we're doing what we're doing on this one. So you already seen me in the past, so I'm going to skip through to the first one, the why. Why are we doing this? Because in principle, we could just disregard that the material we sell in principle ends up at waste. All products, every product inherently end up as waste. So why even care about this one? But we all need to do something about the waste stream management in our optic, because if you look to these statistics, these data, some of you might have heard of, if not, you do it now, the Earth Overshoot Day. I read about it some years ago and I was really shocked by this fact that I'm putting on screen here, which is that in 21, the date for Earth Overshoot Day, which is the day where we as individuals, as a world, have consumed all the materials that are available in the world, has moved from August 3rd in 2011 until now July 29th. So we moved it 1 week back, We can't continue consuming materials as we're consuming now. We need to start finding solutions on circularity. Otherwise, we basically run out of materials, and there's not a planet we want to leave behind. If you look to us as European individuals, and we're here talking in a European context, what you see on screen is that each European individual generated 174 kilos of waste in 2018. We are now actually up by 12.5 kilos since 2008. That's also quite dramatic. We all consumers, we all consume, but it's just increasing. And the last statement I'm making is that in the past 50 years, humans has consumed more resources than in all previous history. So if you look all the way back to we crawled out of the swamp or wherever we came from, I leave that beside, we have consumed more in the last 50 years than ever. That is somewhat mind-blowing for me anyway. So only for that reason, we have to do something about it. So what is that? Before we go into that, I'm talking to label customers, so you most likely know what it is we produce. But just to get the terminology right, we produce material basing on a face stock, which is what you print on. We have the adhesive and we have the liner materials. The liner materials most typically is coming from a paper grade or a filmic grade, most typically also a PET liner, which then is printed by our customers and placed on various products in the ecosystem. That's quite simply what it is we do. If you look to the stats behind this, one thing we can do as an organization and you as customers with your customers is to ensure to adhere to the eco-design principles, where you go in trying to get designers and brand owners to specify materials that are monomaterials, because that will enable recycling much better than if you start mixing up materials. You see a lot of ideas coming out where you take away an element of a film grade or a packaging and exchange it with papers. Challenging that is that it kind of pollutes the recycling streams because it is no longer a clean recycling stream. So mono material can only take you so far. We still have to go out and get hold of the material that we put out in the ecosystem. Also, us saying that we want to have 100% recycled material in all our materials, or 100% of our materials needs to contain recycled materials by 2030. If we are to achieve that, we have to get hold of recycled materials, and we can't have that access on our own because we need to team up with the industry. So the stats you have here is trying to illustrate, for instance, 1 square meter of material that we put out into to US customers and to our partners. 35% of that you see in the middle is liner waste. It says waste, but it's a necessary component to get a material out. If you don't have that, the adhesives will stick to the top side and you no longer have a PSL material. It's just one big bundle of material. So the liners are part of the construction are needed. We get that, but it's also very high quality material we put out there. It's most likely a virgin PET or a recycled PET, or it's a super talented paper material, which also is high quality material. So there's no reason for letting this just go to landfill or to incineration. Let's do something with this material. The latest data points that we have from a report from AWA says that by 2020, there were close to 670,000 tons of material, 607,000 tons of material being sent out to the industry. That includes everything that comes from our graphics colleagues and everything that comes from our tapes colleagues, not only Avery Dennison, but the industry in whole. That's a significant amount of material. And with the increase we have seen during COVID, all of us have seen massive surges of demand for material. This number is most likely going to be significantly higher when we get into 22. So there's heaps of material to go for. So what to do? What to do about this situation? What we thought of is that we want to make a program that is unbiased and goes out and collects material regardless of origin. So we launched the AD Circular, and the challenge was given to us in August 2020 because the existing platforms out there didn't fully suit all customers that are using material. So the challenge we're giving to us, launch a scheme that goes out and collects in a range of European countries, go live by Q1 21 and ensure that it works by that time. So we did. We launched in Feb 21. We are active in 12 countries. We are collecting PET and glassine, or both, depending what you use. We do not and I emphasize this, we do not demand you to buy from Avery Dennison. You can in principle buy from anyone you want to. If you want your liners collected and want us to do it, we come and collect it. I'm saying this both to converters but also to the brand owners. We are aware that the waste that we generate as an industry ends up at brand owners, and we don't have the channels into them, but you have if you are one of our customers. So we really want to team up with you as a partner of ours to go out and collect this material. We've also agreed to go for low minimum quantities, meaning that even small users should have the ability to have the materials collected. There also has to be a minimum level because we can't have trucks roaming around in Europe collecting very small quantities. It's not economical feasible, plus it's not good for emissions. And we guarantee that there's no landfill or incineration. So what you allow us to come and collect, we ensure that it's refurbished into other materials, so it has a second life of sorts. Quite simply, what you see here is the process, which is not simple behind the scenes, but it is in principle. You sign up via the portal we have built, and you see the links on the slide. What you then go and do is sign up and register. How much tonnage do you have, and how frequent do you want us to come and collect it? What we then do is send you an invoice. You pay that one-time fee, and we then send you the boxes for the collection, and you see them on screen. They are clearly marked Lacine or PET. You can't mix them up. It has to be either or because we have different partners. And then you basically start collecting. What you will get out of this is that we collect them, but we also share back to you certificates on what we have collected, which you can put on your webpage. You can put them in the entrance hall of your sites to show that you are partnering with us on this one, doing the right thing. We will tell you how much has been collected and what the emission you have saved by doing so is done. We can't do this alone, so we are working with all kinds of associations. What you see in here is especially pointing to CELAB and FINAT. CELAB is an industry body that we are founding fathers of together with other industry partners, where we sit and discuss overcoming the objections, the issues that are out there in terms of collection, where, how, when. So we have a very, very close relationship to all these bodies in here. We also work closely on PETCO, what we can do in terms of the PET recycling. So we can't do this alone. And as you can see, we are based in the presentation, as you see, a bit far away from the actual consumer and or end user, meaning that we need partnerships to happen and able to let us do this. So this is in its essence what the Avery Dennison Circular Program is about, ensuring getting hold of quite valuable materials and do something with it. When we have a session later in the week, you will hear our partnership from CELAB. They are also presenting. Ophélie from CELAB will be here. And one of our partners from the industry who actually turn this material into other materials will also be present to tell you more about the actual processes behind it. But this is the program we have built. Quickly on learnings and next steps. What we have learned since we have been running this since Feb, so less than a year so far, is that one of the most tricky elements of it was actually the legislation of it. We just heard Sam talk about legislation in Europe going to be national specific. We actually see the same. The challenge lies in that waste or liners are considered as a waste material, but it's not hazardous, it's not anything, but it's very difficult to get these certifications to allow us to drive this waste material cross borders in Europe, but we have them, meaning that our partners don't have to do anything in terms of paperwork, we do it all. But that was a learning from us. Also, the government legislation on sustainability and NGOs is driving this. We are seeing a significant ask for more solutions on these problems. So it is coming, and it's important that we keep educating and advocating solutions to the industry. What you also, and I said it several times now, is that we cannot make this happen on our own. We need partnerships. There's a huge level of interest and a significant amount of first movers. We saw that. There was the one waiting for this, so it's now out there. But we're also reaching out now and knocking on doors at brand owners, because brand owners where they actually produce and use are the places we need to get to, because this is where the liners are. So communication and education is needed from us, from our customers, the converters, the printing houses, from CELAB, from anyone. The industry alignment is also, we are aiming, which is quite ambitious, I have to admit, 75% of all the liners we put into the industry, we want that to be collected by 25. We're going to do that in close collaboration with CELAB. We're going to do it close collaboration with our customers. Again, we cannot make this happen on our own. And adjacent industries, I'm talking to our colleagues in our graphics industry, in the tapes industry, who all are promoting liner recycling schemes in the industry. And then the other thing is that we have to continue ramping up outlets, so second use of the material we collect. What can we do with it? We need partnerships there that can turn the collected material into new materials of sorts, not only liners. And now to the big finale about matrix waste. This is one of the individually biggest waste streams coming from our own industry, the customers we sell to, because you generate the matrix waste. We have a trial program running right now in one European country where we're trialing matrix waste collections on material that we collect from selected few users to get our hands-on experience what we can do with this. And based on these learnings, we are potentially going to roll out a collection scheme across Europe, but it's early days, so I'm not making a commitment here now in public. But the aim is that we want to dip our toes into matrix waste recycling. Based on that, potentially enroll it to ADC for collection. CELAB are also doing a push on this one. So together with CELAB, we are investigating where can it end up, what can we do with this material. So matrix waste currently, we do not have a program running that we can offer you, but we're working on, and we have, so to speak, behind the scene trials running that we're working on. So this is what I had to present to you about the ADC solution, and I'm keen to hear if there's any questions on this.
Yes, there are.
Good.
There are quite some, Niels, thank you. So a question is, what is the collected material used for?
The collected materials are used for different kinds of second life. We put it into, for instance, our partner we're going to bring to the table next week, later this week, are turning them into various forms of material. For instance, tabletops, as we are sitting with now, could be done of recycled materials. They're making point of sales displays. What you see in the shops when you go and buy your sunscreens, it stands on a point of sale. They make these kinds of displays. It's turned into various forms of garden tools, furniture, other kinds, which means that you are then avoiding using virgin materials or fossil fuels to run it.
Great. And which 12 countries are we active in terms of liner collection?
We are active in the main European countries. When I say main, I don't mean this to single out anyone that are not main. But for instance, in Germany, in France, in the UK, in Ireland, in Sweden, in Denmark, and Czech Republic, and so forth. So the main European countries also, because the main concentration of liner waste will be in these countries. We are investigating other countries, but we need to get to, let's call it, critical mass before we roll it out. The ultimate goal is, of course, we collect anywhere from anyone at any time. We basically just need to ensure that the program is running efficiently before we scale up and roll it out further.
And do you recycle it yourself, or is it done by a third party?
It's a third party. We do not have any recycling internally. We, depending on where we collect the materials, we then ensure that it's shipped the shortest possible distance to the most convenient location for us to recycle. Also, again, we're trying to find partners that are close by, so we don't have to drive so far. It's expensive, but also lets out emissions. And therefore, again, the call goes out to more partners to recycle. The challenge with recycling liners is that we all apply silicone to it, or it comes silicone applied. And the traditional recyclers do not like silicone. I don't think they don't like silicone, but they don't like silicone in the materials because it creates small black spots into the recycled materials. There are ways around it, and we are seeing more and more avenues.
Very good. And another question is, and you gave the answer already, but maybe worthwhile to repeat. So is the AD Circular including matrix materials or only for released liners?
The program officially today only collects, we collect PET liners and we collect glassine liners with the partners. We are investigating by trial to a couple of customers to see what we can do with the matrix waste. So it's still on a trial basis, and as soon, if ever, we are able to roll it out, which I'm sincerely believing we can, we will announce it very boldly because it's very much sought for in the industry. But we do not have it today.
And Niels, last question on the list here. Do we know the CO2 impact of liner recycling process?
We do know, because we can make the calculations. So if we know where we collect it and where we deposit it, we can make a calculation, and that calculation goes back to the partners we have. So if you, for instance, allow us to come and collect your liner waste, and we can then tell that we deposit it, let's say in the Netherlands, I can then tell you how much kilometers we have driven, how much we have collected, and I will give you back an emission saving. Yes, we can make this calculation.
Great. These are all the questions, at least on the list. Thank you very much, Niels.
No problem at all.
So thank you again for joining us today. And a quick reminder, we have 3 more sessions prepared for you. So tomorrow, focus will be a role of a label in the sustainable packaging. So please make sure to join. On Wednesday, you will see more examples of actual products or solutions, like the questions we had today on a specific adhesive or on a specific label. And on Thursday, there will be a sustainability expert panel. You will see a link in a chat box below. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And please make sure to interact with us. It's a pleasure to be the host for you this week, together with Niels, and wishing you a very great day ahead. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for taking time, yes.